Once upon a time, English was a language invented to confuse everyone equally. Then Singapore looked at it and said, "Canla, but must upgrade." The result? Singlish 2.0, where grammar dies, but communication is reborn, and somehow it actually works. You see, while Western linguists are still arguing whether the Oxford comma should live or die, Singaporeans are busy re-engineering the English operating system, optimized for efficiency, emotion, and maximum sass. Singlish 2.0 isn't just broken English, it's customized software for human feelings. Where else can you express anger, affection, sarcasm, and resignation in one syllable? La? Try doing that with Queen's English. You'll sound like you're writing a resignation letter from the 1950s. But here's where it gets spicy. The West still thinks Singlish is bad English. You know, the same people who think French fries come from France and literally means literally. In Singapore, English evolved under pressure, like a diamond, but with more la, le, and law. It's the language of people who survived British rule, air conditioning, and group projects. Singlish 2.0 is now the unofficial social glue, the language that says, I can speak perfect English if I want to, but I don't want to. And that's the true beauty. It's linguistic rebellion with an MRT card. It tells the world, we're global, but not colonial. So in today's episode, we'll dive into how English became fun again, by being reprogrammed through humor, rhythm, and emotional honesty. By the end, you might realize that the future of English isn't in London or New York. It's hiding under a kopitiam umbrella, sipping Milo, saying relax la. Once upon a colonial time, English came to Singapore dressed in a tuxedo, polished, posh, and profoundly pretentious. It was the language of the British officers who thought la is a tropical disease. But Singaporeans are practical. They looked at the Queen's English, the kind that says, would you kindly fetch me a cup of tea? And said, aya, too long la. Just say, tea can or not. And that's how the rebellion began. Hawker stores became the new Oxford. Kopitiams turned into classrooms. Forget Cambridge. Real English was being beta tested between mouthfuls of chicken rice. Every la, lay, and law was like a software patch, fixing what Queen's English never understood, emotion. Because when someone says, can la, it's not just agreement. It's warmth, confidence, and a mild threat depending on tone. Meanwhile, the British left behind a rule book. Singaporeans used it to swat mosquitoes. By the 1980s, schools were still teaching proper English, but the playgrounds were already speaking version 2.0. Kids learned that grammar might get you marks, but Singlish gets you friends. And honestly, which is more important in a nation with humidity at 90%? Then came globalization. The West came back, shocked. They heard Singlish and went, oh dear, that's terrible English. Singaporeans smiled and replied, yeah, but you understand what I say, right? That's the thing. Communication won and pretension lost. Singlish wasn't a downgrade. It was a linguistic upgrade disguised as rebellion. It compressed emotion, efficiency, and sarcasm into one sentence. It was no longer about speaking like the Queen. It was about surviving like a Singaporean. From the hawker stall to the boardroom, Singlish became identity, unity, and humor in one. It's how a nation told its former masters, thanks for the dictionary, we'll edit it ourselves. If Queen's English is Microsoft Word, rigid, bloated, and crashing under pressure, then Singlish is WhatsApp with emotions enabled. 3 syllables, la, le, law, can do what 1,000 English words can't. Express tone, trust, and emotional temperature. They're not words, they're feelings disguised as grammar glitches. Canla, confident, done deal. Canla, reluctant, maybe later. Can law, fine, I'll do it, but you owe me bubble tea. Congratulations, you've just learned emotional programming. The West spent decades studying emotional intelligence. Singapore did it by adding vowels. Because Singlish isn't about syntax, it's about vibes. It doesn't ask you to explain how you feel. It makes you feel with tone. It's the linguistic equivalent of using emojis before emojis existed. Imagine an American business meeting. Can you finish this by Monday? Yes, I will endeavor to do so. Now imagine the Singaporean version. Can do la. Same answer. 300% more efficient, 10x more human. And the beauty? Everyone gets it. Malay, Chinese, Indian, expat, Singlish doesn't discriminate. It's the universal language of we all tired, but we're still doing our best. Even AI can't replicate it. Try teaching ChatGPT la, and it'll short circuit trying to assign grammatical value. Because la is logic plus soul. Singlish 2.0 turned English from a colonial tool into a cultural handshake. Every la reminds you that this isn't the Queen's language anymore. It's the people's operating system. And when Singaporeans sprinkle it into global meetings, they're not being unprofessional. They're being authentically bilingual, switching between precision and personality in milliseconds. Singlish didn't break English. It fixed what English forgot. That language isn't supposed to impress. It's supposed to connect. Let's be honest, when Westerners hear Singlish, their faces go through the 5 stages of linguistic grief: confusion, denial, judgment, Google Translate, and finally, enlightenment. To them, Singlish sounds like English fell off a motorcycle. To Singaporeans, it sounds like freedom, because in the West, correct English means sounding expensive. Received pronunciation, BBC English, Ivy League English, basically vocabulary with an accent budget. Meanwhile, Singapore turned it into a democracy of words. Why use therefore when so law gets the job done faster? Why say, I completely understand your predicament when I know la conveys empathy and impatience in 2 words? But here's the real irony. Westerners think they're protecting English purity as if it's a UNESCO heritage site. Newsflash. English was never pure. It's a Frankenstein monster made of French, Latin, German, and colonial guilt. Singlish just made it honest. It stripped away the pretense and added efficiency, like turning Shakespeare into stand-up comedy. When a British expat says, "Oh dear, I seem to have misplaced my wallet," and a Singaporean replies, "Alamak, lose again, ah." That's not broken English. That's translation for real life. Singlish 2.0 is the first dialect to make English emotionally accurate. The West writes essays to express tone. Singapore does it with 1 particle and a facial expression. It's linguistic evolution, not degradation. A 21st century patch for a 19th century operating system. But of course, Western grammar purists will still complain. They'll say, it's ungrammatical. And Singaporeans will smile and reply, "Ya law, but you understand, right?" That's the moment the empire officially loses the argument, because Singlish doesn't need approval. It already conquered something better: comprehension with character. It's not English 2.0, it's English that actually works. Once upon a not so long ago, Singlish lived quietly in kopitiams, the humble coffee shops where philosophy costs $1.50 a cup. Then TikTok happened. Now the world knows that "aya" is not a sneeze, and "la" is basically punctuation with attitude. Suddenly, Western influencers were saying things like, "Good morning, la," and Singaporeans collectively screamed, "Wrong context, brah." That's when it hit everyone. Singlish wasn't just local slang, it was export-grade charisma. Because in a world tired of perfect English, Singlish sounded real, authentic, spicy, slightly chaotic, like verbal chili crab. It was the anti-filter filter, and Gen Z loved it. They turned Singlish expressions into global memes, remixing them with K-pop, anime, and crypto jokes. Can la became a universal approval stamp. Don't play play became life advice, and wah lao air became the global expression of existential despair. Even expats started using it, cautiously, like cultural tourists holding durians. You'd hear them say, "This meeting very gialot, man." And every Singaporean HR manager secretly smiled. Assimilation complete. But here's the funny thing. Singlish didn't have to try to go viral. It's naturally meme-shaped. Short, expressive, emotionally rich, and slightly rude in the most lovable way. Meanwhile, the Singapore government spent decades trying to speak good English, but the internet said, nah, we like this version better. Because global audiences don't want sterile grammar, they want identity. They want rhythm, tone, humanity, all things Singlish delivers with zero effort. So from kopitiams to comment sections, Singlish became the world's new favourite accent of honesty, not polished, not pretentious, just real. And as one American TikToker recently said, I don't understand half of what Singaporeans are saying, but it sounds happy. That's when you know you've made it. When people don't just understand your words, they feel your culture. Singlish didn't just survive globalization, it made globalization sound cute, chaotic, and slightly roasted. Somewhere in Silicon Valley, a group of engineers is training AI to understand human emotions. They call it sentiment analysis. Singaporeans call it common sense lah. See, machines can process words, but they can't process tone. You can feed ChatGPT a billion English sentences, and it still won't understand the difference between can la, enthusiastic, and can la, regretting life choices. That's the secret. Singlish isn't just language, it's context compressed into sound. It's the emotional microchip of Southeast Asia. Meanwhile, corporate Singapore is stuck in a love-hate relationship. They tell employees, please speak proper English in meetings. But when the Zoom call ends, everyone switches back instantly. Wah, that client damn blurley. Because you can't fake authenticity. You can force grammar, but not sincerity. That's why AI will never fully replace human communication in Singapore. It can't handle the sarcasm bandwidth. Ask an AI, you done or not? It'll just reply, yes. Ask a Singaporean, and you'll get a full emotional essay in one eyebrow raise. Even corporate memos sound suspiciously robotic compared to the warmth of Singlish. Please find the attached document for your reference. Who writes like that in real life? A Singaporean would say, I send already lah. Check your email can. Same message, 10x clearer, 100x friendlier. In a world obsessed with professional communication, Singlish is quietly winning, because it's the only dialect that sounds human in an age of robots. It's empathy with efficiency, clarity with chaos, humour with honesty. And here's the twist. Even foreigners working in Singapore eventually catch the bug. They start dropping la accidentally, first ironically, then unironically. That's how Singlish spreads, not by teaching, but by infecting. AI can mimic accents, translate languages, even fake emotions. But it will never master the gentle art of ayah, because Singlish isn't coded, it's lived, and no algorithm can imitate the sound of tired optimism mixed with sarcasm and love. Let's face it, English as we know it is tired. It's been colonized, standardized, monetized, and overcorrected until it sounds like a legal contract read by a robot. Then came Singlish, fresh, noisy, and gloriously rebellious. It didn't ask permission from Oxford. It just plugged emotion into grammar and rebooted the system. If Shakespeare heard modern English, he'd faint. If he heard Singlish, he'd probably join a kopitiam table and say, well, Lower, this one got rhythm seer. Because Singlish isn't chaos, it's compressed culture. Every la carries warmth. Every law carries resignation. Every lair carries nuance no dictionary ever will. And that's the irony. While the West debates proper English, the rest of the world is remixing it. India, Nigeria, the Philippines, each turning colonial leftovers into national soul food. But Singapore made it gourmet. Singlish 2.0 is proof that perfection kills personality. You can't feel love through dear sir, madam, but you can through yo, why you like that la? That's why the future of global English sounds less like BBC News and more like a hawker auntie multitasking 3 languages and 1 attitude. It's fast, efficient, emotionally real, the linguistic version of surviving life with a smile. Soon, the world will realize that English doesn't belong to England anymore. It belongs to whoever makes it mean something. And in that sense, Singapore isn't just speaking a dialect. It's leading a revolution, one la at a time. So the next time someone says, "Your English very bad whore," you can smile and reply, "Not bad la. Just upgrade it." Because English 1.0 taught us how to speak, Singlish 2.0 taught us how to feel. So tell me, do you think Singlish makes English more human or just more confusing? Drop your answer below. And don't bluff whore. I'm reading the comments one by one, can?